With Thanksgiving behind us, we're looking closer again at the world around us. And what we find is instability, change, and sadly, war. In the Netherlands, an earth-shattering election victory for Geert Wilders, who has preached for decades against an invasion of Muslims into Western Europe and the damage it would do. He's also poised to tear down the Green New Deal and put an end to the forced destruction of Dutch farms and agriculture under ill-advised climate deals forced by the EU and the World Health Organization, among others, all shilling for the far-left agenda. Just a little before Wilders claimed his historic victory, and there, voters in Argentina rejected socialism across the board, too, electing a man often compared to Donald Trump, his name, Javier Milei. Another far-right leader intent on destroying the shift left and restoring freedom and capitalism in his South American country. And here at home, Donald Trump also leading in the polls across the nation, and the Democrats are in full-blown panic in many circles with less than 1 year to go. On the world stage, all eyes remain on Israel and the war in Gaza, where the Hamas terrorists have released a few dozen of the hostages they took when they brutally murdered, raped, and defiled more than 1,400 mostly unarmed civilians back on the 7th of October. Among the hostages released, a 4-year-old girl, Abigail Eden, whose parents were murdered in front of her on that day. That's right, these people took hostages that were 4 years old, having slaughtered their parents before carting her away. Another, a 9-year-old Irish-Israeli girl, Emily Hand, whose family thought she was dead, was at a sleepover when the bloody attacks began, and she is now free and very much alive. And now the IDF has called a temporary pause in fighting to allow for more hostages to be released, and have promised an additional day without fighting for every 10 hostages set free going forward. But it is the weakness in the White House, my friends. From the frail and feeble Joe Biden, it's what has led us here. War on his watch first came to Ukraine in February of 2022 and then to Israel in October. And this weakness will lead to other conflict and more bloodshed if we don't get back on the right track, and very, very soon. Biden's support of Israel has exposed huge divisions among partisan Democrats, many of whom say they will never support Biden again. Others so angry they turn out to heckle him wherever he goes. It happened again when so-called Free Palestine activists shouted Biden down at the lighting of the Christmas tree on Nantucket over this past weekend. And this, like I've been telling you since it began, is the Democrats' holy war. It's the war that could tear the party apart once and for all. Joe Biden's trying to thread a needle in his response, but there's a long way to go, and none of this is over. Here's what he said after more hostages were released, that is, on Sunday. Listen.
Sir, do you expect that if you are able to use this momentum to extend the pause, have you extracted any guarantees about proof of life for other hostages? Or do you have an expectation of how much longer you could push this pause?
Well, look, you know the deal calls for every 10 hostages released to extend another day. So I'm hopeful this is not the end. It's going to continue, but we don't know. And but I get a sense that all the players in the region, even the neighbors who aren't and have been directly involved now, are looking for a way to end this so the hostages are all released and Hamas is completely, how can I say it, no longer in control of any portion of Gaza.
No longer in control. We'll get back to that in a moment. But how strange is it, by the way? How pleased Joe seems to be with himself. I mean, he's been a failure on both domestic policy and foreign policy, but to hear him tell it, he's a hero. And he thinks he's just doing a marvelous job, and his gleeful attitude while the world around him is burning is galling, to say the least. And what do I mean by that? We'll listen to this.
Thank you all so very much. I know, we have to call you. I know you say, what's he calling me with only 10 minutes or so notice? I said, that's the notice I get, because we didn't know. I didn't want to be having this press conference if they weren't physically, even when they were in the Red Cross ambulance. I didn't want to do it because they were not out. They were still in Gaza. So I don't thank you enough, but thanks for your patience. And I know it's...
We're here anytime. Sir.
All right. Jill, I thank...
Happy holidays.
Okay, happy holidays to you guys.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And like I said, this guy can spin anything. Well, he can try. I mean, the polls are getting worse all the time. You've seen that, setting all new record lows for any president, with one-time constituents fleeing in search of competence and sanity. Two things are not being offered right now. But the most galling of all of it, was Joe Biden saying it was his effort, his diplomacy, think about this, that was so good, his diplomacy was so good that it triggered the Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel, leaving 1,400 dead. Yeah, he is that arrogant or delusional or both. Listen to what he says. Here it is.
But I believe one of the reasons why Hamas struck when they did was they knew that I was working very closely with the Saudis and others in the region to bring peace to the region by having recognition of Israel and Israel's right to exist. You may recall when we did the G20 about a little while ago, I was able to get a resolution, a statement passed through there saying we're going to build a railroad from Riyadh all the way through the Middle East into Saudi Arabia, Israel, et cetera, and all the way up to Europe. Not the railroad, but it would be an underground pipeline and then railroad. The whole idea is there's overwhelming interest, and I think most Arab nations know it, in coordinating with one another to change the dynamic in their region for longer-term peace. And that is what I'm going to continue to work on.
Is his staff just telling the old man this stuff? Does he truly believe this? Or does he know he's lying?